called Curtis. I forgot to put that on my slide. But I'm glad Lindsay went first because mine is sort of in the same realm. I'm doing my presentation on Syrian refugees, and being in America and especially going to Southeastern, sometimes I feel, and I don't know if y'all feel, very separate from the rest of the world. And I feel like I hear all these stories, little bits of it, but I never know the full picture of what's happening. And it seems so far away that it feels like I can't do anything to help. But I think the greatest way that we can help people, the first step to help, is to become aware of what's happening in the world. So I thought it would be good to do a project on what is happening in Syria with hundreds of thousands of refugees looking for a place to live. So what's happening in Syria all began with President Assad. He became president whenever he was 34 years old in 2000. His dad before him was also a very controlling leader, and the people didn't have much freedom. But he wasn't supposed to be president. He had an older brother that was going to take the throne, you could say. But his brother died in a speed crash, so he had actually studied to be in the medical field. So quickly he had to train and get ready to take the position of his father. In the beginning, he promised change, and he did actually live up to that promise somewhat. He allowed the first independent newspaper in 3 decades to be printed, and he released hundreds of prisoners. But it looks like the freedom that he wanted to give the people was compromised by the old government officials that were still loyal to his father. So he did have great promise, but it didn't pan out. So protests began to break out. In 2001, some teenagers at a high school painted some revolutionary symbols on the side of their school, and they were arrested and tortured, and this made the people so angry that thousands of people came out into the street and protested, and the government responded with violence. They shot to the crowd and killed tons of people, and the people responded to them with more violence. They got weapons to protect themselves and then to defend what they believed in. So it was like a violence versus violence, which doesn't really go well normally. So 220,000 people have been killed in Syria. Many more hurt and wounded. The government limits or prevents people from getting food and water, so not only are the people that are fighting struggling and hurting and dying, but people that are just innocent at their homes, not doing anything, are starving because of this. And no one really has freedom. Also, to go back to the president, we all know that there's a huge debate between Syria and Israel, and he agrees with his father in saying that there will be no peace unless occupied land will return in full. So there's also that huge feud. Many of the surrounding countries have joined in with the civil war that's broken out. So as you might have heard, there are hundreds of thousands or millions of people that have fled Syria. 9 million people have fled, and there's 11 million people who have been displaced from their homes within the country. The majority have fled to surrounding countries that are also involved in the war, but maybe not as heavily of it. And the UN has launched an appeal for $8.4 billion to provide help to 18 million Syrians after only securing about half of the funding it asked for in 2014. So there's 12.2 million people in Syria that are in need of humanitarian assistance inside Syria, including 5.6 million children. So there are just so many people hurting. And the people that are fleeing on boats, as you can see, this boat is just loaded. She's way over capacity with people, and many of the boats have sunk. Many people have died. There's a really famous picture that just came out of a little boy who washed up on a shore. He was a Syrian article that said don't get on the boat from a Syrian refugee who said in some cases the European government are treating them worse than the Syrian government, and they're more afraid of them than they were in Syria, which is scary. So really, as I mentioned before, I think it's good for us to become aware of what is happening in Syria so that we can be a help, whether that be just praying or providing money for organizations that are bringing these people food and comfort in homes. I know in Germany they've opened their borders, and it seems like the people are being really great. The German people came out and gave them food and from their homes and just were like really helpful to them. So, and which I think is a beautiful act of redemption for what Germany has faced in the past. Also, there's never been more refugees since World War II, so this is a pretty big deal what's happening. So if we could help organizations that are already working, maybe if you're going on a missions trip, try to aim for countries where the Syrian refugees might be located so that you can show them the love that they obviously need in a time like this. And I think it's important to remember that these are real people. It's not just a story that we see in the news or a movie that we see. This is a real human life that is experiencing this, and it's millions and millions and millions who don't have a voice. So as Proverbs 31:8 says, speak out in behalf of the voiceless and for the rights of all those who are vulnerable. And obviously these people are very vulnerable right now. So let's be a light, let's help them. Thank you.